that. Like I did see some really beautiful deaths where people really like turned towards it and kind of embraced it, knowing that it was going to happen. And it was really beautiful and really peaceful and really like joyful in a way. Once you accept that piece of life, I think that you can live more fully and more richly.
I want to remind people that we're going to die so that we can live our most vibrant, urgent,
Yeah.
clear, present lives. It's not just like being aware of death. It's like listening to this inner voice, maybe this inner intuition, and just calling it. Woo, I'm even getting emotional saying it, and just like calling it when it's time to call it. Put your hand on your heart, look up at the sky, smile and say, hey, I'm alive. Thanks for being alive with me today. Hey, and welcome to Be Alive. I am super stoked today to bring a new guest to the stage, and her name is Megan Titcomb. Megan Titcomb is a nurse who has a history in the ICU and has also bridged her work from that wisdom that we get from being around the beds of the people who are sick and dying, as well as your own wisdom into coaching. And you know, the cool thing that as I was learning more about you and reading into your bio and looking through your social media, is you just have this like all around wellness. I just got this vibe that you're this like all around caregiver. So I can only imagine the heart that you have for helping others. But welcome to the show today, Megan.
Thank you so much. I'm super excited to be here, and I'm really honored, honestly, that you like asked me to be here and share my story. So I'm excited.
Yeah, and there's a lot of reasons that I wanted to have you on the show, because I love sharing people's stories who have changed careers, right? Or especially done something to follow your dreams. And I love sharing the stories of how it's like not always exactly like a clean transition, right? This year for me is 10 years since I started You Might Die Tomorrow. It's like, you know, when we're in entrepreneurship, people think that it's like, oh, when I quit Google in 2016, I started this, you know, successful journey as an entrepreneur and have never looked back. And the reality is like oftentimes we're doing multiple jobs and things can get a little crazy. So, and then we also have the more passion for mortality awareness in common. So, yeah, if you could just kind of tell us a little bit about your background in nursing, in it sounds like holistic wellness, and now in coaching.
Yeah. Yeah. So I graduated from nursing school in 2015. And I went to a holistic nursing program. And so I was like so excited to kind of like provide that holistic care to my patients and, you know, tend to the body, mind, and spirit. And then as soon as I got to the bedside, I was like, oh, this is not exactly what I was expecting. A lot of times as a nurse, you don't have the time to give, or I felt like I didn't have the time and the resources to give really good holistic care. It's very task oriented and you're kind of stretched thin, and then you give so much that you can get kind of fatigued. But kind of as time went on, I switched around to different units, and then I found myself in the cardiac ICU at a level 1 trauma hospital during COVID. So I was just seeing like the sickest of the sick in a really critical time in our world, and seeing lots of people get really sick and die. And I had been getting progressively more and more burnt out as, you know, my years went by as a nurse. But I kind of got to a point where I was just like, I really feel like I wasn't living that fully. Like I was feeling really just tired and depressed and bogged down. And I was just like, I feel like there's got to be, I have so much to give. I have so much, I love helping people and I love caring for people, but it didn't feel like that's what I was doing at this point. And so that's when I kind of went on this journey of like, what else can I do with these skills that I have and this knowledge that I've acquired over the years? And then I found coaching. So I took it's a nurse coaching program. So coaching specifically for RNs, and teaches you the coaching piece of healthcare. And so, I started taking that as I was still working, as you said, kind of like overlapping during the transition period from nurse to coach. And then I moved into an RV and just went full time on learning how to be a coach, kind of dove in as much as I could to take in everything I could. And then, I think probably like 6 months ago, like started, maybe almost coming up on a year, started my LLC and my business. And now just putting everything into creating a coaching business and working a little bit as a nurse on the side, but not much.
Cool. So my first question is what is your definition of, I want to dig in more into the coaching nursing program. I think that's really unique and cool and who that's for. But first, in the beginning of your career, you had gone to this holistic nursing program and then went into traditional nursing. How would you define holistic nursing?
I would define holistic nursing as a very basic definition would just be like caring for mind, body, and spirit. And to me, what that means, it's like going into the patient's room and waking them up, asking, like spending the time to ask. It's like basic stuff, like ask how their night was, give them a warm washcloth to wash their face, see if they want to brush their teeth, get them up, because it's like we always feel better when we're up and the windows are open and, there's like a breeze. But in the hospital, you can't even open the windows a lot of times. And you don't have time to like get people out of bed a lot of times, or even a lot of people don't think to give people a washcloth, but it's simple things like that. And then like just sitting down and hearing people out. Like sometimes people they got to unload. They're feeling really stressed and they want to talk. And most of the time you don't have time to like sit down and talk with them and really figure out what's going on. It's a lot of like, here's your pills. This is the schedule for the day. I have to go, like press the call out if you have to go to the bathroom kind of thing. Like there's more, you can do more, but I'd say the holistic piece, it takes a lot of time and you need to be like very present. And it's hard to be present with like call lights going off or other patients needing your attention.
And being short staffed, I'm guessing, just puts a lot of strain where there's not the time.
Definitely.
So did you go directly from nursing school into the ICU?
I started out on like a med surge floor, just kind of general. It was actually at the VA. It was like a med surge detox unit. So that was a really interesting experience. And then moved to Denver, and I went on a cardiac floor. And then a couple of years after that, I went to the ICU, and I was at the ICU for 2.5 years.
Was that a very transformational time in your life?
The ICU?
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. Yeah. I think the time in which I moved there was, it was like 2000, 2001 when I went to the ICU. And so COVID was still like in full full force. And I saw so many people really, really sick, like really, really, really sick, and so many people pass away. And I think that was like, I think my big takeaway from that time was I realized how our healthcare system really does not encourage embracing death at all. It's a lot of how can we, like, what treatments can we give? What medications can we give? What surgeries can we try? And it's like always trying to continue to live kind of at the cost of like immense suffering and elongated suffering. And I could see the resistance from both like the patient and the families of pushing off the inevitable so much so that it was creating like all this extra suffering. And I think that really hit me hard because I've seen the opposite of that. Like I did see some really beautiful deaths where people really like turned towards it and kind of embraced it, knowing that it was going to happen. And it was really beautiful and really peaceful and really like joyful in a way. But the vast majority was like this like tooth and nail battle, and it caused so much extra suffering. And I think I started to adopt this philosophy of like, we all know we're going to die. That's inevitable. And I think it's important to be prepared for that with having like your advanced directives in place and having had those conversations with your family so that you can be more at peace with like while you're living, if that makes sense. Like once you accept that piece of life, I think that you can live more fully and more richly.
Beautiful. I mean, what a range of experiences, and it's just interesting that you really perceived that nuance of those that were sort of fighting tooth and nail, and then in that there was this additional suffering that was experienced, both it sounds like by the patient as well as by their families, and then you notice the people who were dying. It sounds like with more dignity and grace. What do you think is sort of the difference between the two? Like what did the people who died with grace do or have, or what was their mindset that contributed to that versus the ones that didn't?
Hmm. That's a really good question. I think it was like this sense of like acceptance. Like it was accepting, like knowing I'm going to die, like they're going to die, and like having this sense of peace with that. And I don't think that comes easily or in like one day, like I think that's like a way you have to live your life so that when you get to that point, you can feel that peace. And I think that's like why I really resonated with your message, because it's like live fully, do everything you can now, because one day we will come to that end point and like you want to feel at peace. And I think like the extra element that I saw a lot was rather than avoiding it, like not talking about it, not wanting to look at it, just being like, we're going to die. Like that is a part of life. And then it becomes a part of your day to day, like just how you operate in the world. And then when that day does come, you're like more prepared for it and you can kind of turn towards it. And it can be this beautiful experience instead of continuing to kind of deny it and then, yeah, creating extra suffering by that denial.
Oh, and it really takes a lot of unique thinking, right? It really, I think in our day and age, especially in the US and in the West, it really, you have to think differently. You have to really take the onus and the intention to look at death differently, because of course we know in our society, we automatically think that death is morbid and depressing. But then even in the medical community, which I'm sure you know far better than I, that we often will look to our doctors to let us know when we're close to death or when we're going to die. But very often, they're perhaps for some similar but also different reasons, they're not going to even bring it up until the very last minute either, right? So it really has to come from us. And like you said, the earlier and the farther away you are from your mortality, the better. So what do you for someone who is thinking, what if I get cancer, or what if I get, some kind of disease, or I have some type of physical trauma? How do you navigate the medical system knowing that the medical system is very survival obsessed as well? And if you have any examples of someone who did that well, or doctors who did it really poorly, so that we can look out for that, I think that would be really helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. Survival obsessed is a good way to put it. And that is like a big qualm I've had with the medical system. And I think it's very cultural, is that like a lot of doctors and providers don't want to say you're going to die. Like I think the belief is that it's better to give people hope, which I think in maybe some instances, like that is a good way to go. But I saw a lot of instances where it's like, well, why don't we start talking about, what's probably going to happen here? But I think like on a practical level, I think the best possible thing that you can do is have conversations with people that will be your decision makers and tell them what you want and get it like in writing in like a legal document. Because I mean, I've done that even at 33 years old, because I've seen people who don't have these conversations with their families. And it's like, I don't know, we never really talked about what they would want. So then their families are stuck in these situations that are like nightmarish and having to make these really tough decisions with no roadmap from the sick family member. And then the family member who is sick is like, we don't know if that's what they want or not. And they're just kind of at the mercy of these emotional decisions that are being made by the family. So I think like the absolute best thing you can do is just be open with your loved ones about what you would want, and then get it in writing. Like the 5 wishes document. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Mm-mm.
I love that document. It's like it breaks it down really simply. And if you fill out the 5 wishes, then you have a really good foundation for like your advanced directives or like your living will kind of, and I can't think of them off the top of my head, but if you fill that out, it's like you have a really good foundation and people can kind of at least figure out what decisions they could make based on that document.
And it won't always be easy. Like I have done this with my family, right? Like I I talk about death all the time, right? Like and I've even sent these things to my family. I've sent them, right, like logins to financial things and like my social media. I've sent them what to do in the event of my death, and they're uncomfortable with it such that they like won't reply, and it's like I just sent you a very important email and did you receive it, and they're like, oh yeah, I got it, and I'm like, but no, really, like I want you to do this and this. So it will be challenging, but if you're listening and you have this desire to die with dignity, like what you're saying, Megan,
Yeah.
and die with grace, it requires us to step into our leadership while we're alive and kicking.
Yep. Yeah, 100%. And so like what I've noticed as I've started going into this kind of coaching and wanting, and I would love to hear your experience with this, but as I've like kind of gotten the ball rolling on trying to talk about death and dying, like it's really hard to even, I think, like open that door because people don't want to talk about it. And so it's like, hey, I have this idea, like to talk about like the 5 wishes and we can chat about what you want if you're really sick or dying. And people are like, I'm not really going to jump at that offer because it's not stuff that people want to talk about readily, at least in my experience. I think once you get into it a bit and you talk more about like the meaning of life and what it is to live, I think people get into that. But the resistance is real. Like it's very real that we don't want to look at death and illness.
Yeah, why do you think I rebranded from You Might Die Tomorrow to The Alive Kate? I changed my Instagram. Yeah, it was totally because, I heard this concept of the guerrilla speech. I read about it in a speaking book, a book all about professional public speaking. And it totally changed my perspective on how to talk about death and dying. So the idea of the guerrilla speech is like, if you want to talk about something in your speech that is maybe a little bit unsexy, you actually sell your speech as something else that is attractive, right? Like, so I want to remind people that we're going to die so that we can live our most vibrant, urgent,
Yeah.
clear, present lives. But, they're not going to pay me 10, 20, 30, 40 grand to stand on stage and talk about death at, XYZ large corporation. So that was when I realized that I had to rebrand. So, I still have the You Might Die Tomorrow book. I still have Instagram. I still sell all my You Might Die Tomorrow merch. But in 2022, I rebranded. I changed my Instagram. I changed the way that I market. I started a new website that's all about feeling alive. And so my speech that I sell is called Feel Alive in Life and at Work. But Megan, you better believe I'd be up there talking about death. I mean, you still have to deliver on your overarching promise. And the whole speech isn't about death, but there is a story in there that very like tells that. And so, yeah, the struggle's real, whether we're doing this in our business or trying to talk about it in our personal lives. But I think that we don't really realize how much our actions affect others. And so our courage affects in talking about these things affects others. And just look what happened with you. You were able to witness these people dying with dignity and grace, and it's transformed your whole life.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good point. It's only been maybe there was one woman in particular who just kind of like blew my mind a little bit because I never worked in hospice, and I'm sure that these stories are much more prevalent in a hospice setting. I was in a critical care where we're always trying to fix things pretty much. But this woman, she got this diagnosis, this like chronic diagnosis, and there was an option to treat or to kind of like go hospice. And she was cognizant, she was walking around, she like looked fairly healthy, and she chose to go hospice and like not do the procedure, which I almost never saw happen. And then it was within like, I swear, like 12 hours, she started like kind of like dying almost. But like during that time, she had all of her children flew in from all over the country, and she started planning out her funeral. Like she started writing her eulogy. She started picking out her flowers. She picked out all the songs that she wanted for her service. And it was like she had just flipped and she was like ready to do it. And then the next day I came in and she was like in bed, not getting up anymore. And she was seeing past loved ones, kind of like appearing at the end of her bed. And she was like having conversations with them. And then they'd go away. And then like her husband would come, and then like her parents and her daughters were all there watching this entire thing unfold. And so every time I would check in, it was like this new beautiful thing happening. And it was all from this decision to like turn towards this and be like, okay, I don't want to do the other procedure, and I don't want to just like keep taking meds. Like, I'm ready. And she embraced it so fully. And like, she really is, her actions really have like influenced me very, very heavily. And I think she's a big part of that for sure. And it's cool to think like that her actions in the last couple of days of her life have influenced me. And now it's like encouraging me to speak out about this too. So it's like her actions are living on.
That's beautiful. And, for someone who's listening and is like, well, what if she would have had the operation and could have lived longer? What do you say to that?
I mean, she probably could have, but I think the real beauty in that I saw was like, that was 100% her choice, and I think if it was 100% her choice to do the procedure and just keep fighting this thing, I think there's beauty in that too. But I think where it becomes really tricky is when people start making choices based on like what their family wants or what they think they should do. And then they're in this position where they're doing things for somebody else other than themselves. And she knew exactly what she wanted, and she stuck to it, and she like created this beautiful death experience for her and her family and for me. I think because she owned it so much is like what made it like really beautiful.
And there's always the possibility that maybe she would have gone into the operation and maybe died on the table, right? While she's in, and that's very traumatic. That's a very traumatic experience when you're trying to say, and then they're dying on the table, and then for everyone. And so this element of owning it, I'm a mortality awareness like practitioner, and I'm even getting a little anxious as you're talking about this. Like I just am feeling this like this new level of awareness of, it's not just like being aware of death. It's like listening to this inner voice, maybe this inner intuition, and just calling it. Woo, I'm even getting emotional saying it, and just like calling it when it's time to call it, right? And like, there's a lot of beauty in that. That is a very powerful story, Megan. Thank you so much for sharing it.
Oh yeah, I love sharing that story because it did change my perspective, and it was incredibly powerful. And I think that's where, like what I had mentioned earlier, like living, I call myself a life alignment coach, because I think living in alignment is what you need through your entire life as well as your death to be able to make those calls, like be able to like check in with yourself and be like, what do I want? Like, what is happening inside of me right now? Like, is it my time or is it time to fight? Like maybe when you're at that point, but I think you need to be living in alignment with like your truth and your values and be able to hold fast to those things. And that's like what she did. And I asked her daughters, I was like, is this how she's always been? Like, or is this surprising that she's made this decision? Like, oh no, this is her. Like, this is how she's always been in her life. And it's like, and it was how she was in her death as well. And so, yeah, I think that piece is inspiring. It's like, it's about being in alignment for your whole life. And I think that can carry on into death.
Well, and that's just a great moment to bring up the top regret of the dying, cited by a hospice and palliative care nurse, Bronnie Ware. The top regret of the dying that she put in that blog post was, I wish I had had the courage to live a life true to me and not the life others expected of me. And so people are like, well, what is living in alignment? And I just love that you're coaching people on that, because I think it's like a muscle that we can't expect to have like the Hail Mary pass, right? When we're at our sickest and weakest, where we're suddenly going to like have this strength to assert our desires and our values. Like, no, we have to work that muscle through our whole lives. And I think a lot of people are like, oh, I always hear people saying that they get these intuitive downloads, or they hear that voice of like what their purpose is. And they think that it's like this thing that just gets, and sometimes it is, there's like spontaneous downloads, right? But I think how it shows up in my life is the more that I like, even when it sounds crazy, like honor that intuitive voice and that intuitive like gnawing that I get in my gut, then the more I hear and the more I know like what my truth is. So the fact that you train people to live in alignment is so powerful. So can you go into a little bit about some experiences you've had with coaching people in alignment and what that how that shows up in your work?
Yeah. Yeah. And I agree 100% what you're saying, like that it is a muscle that you have to start flexing because you explained it perfectly there. Like at the very end of your life, when you're your weakest and your family is kind of emotionally vulnerable, like you can't expect to have that Hail Mary pass for all of a sudden. I mean, maybe I'm sure some people do, but in my experience, most people didn't, didn't have that Hail Mary moment of kind of like
Let me die.
flexing that muscle, that alignment muscle in the last moments. But yeah, as far as like coaching people into alignment, it's like a subtle like peeling back of layers. It depends on how much work you've done on yourself kind of in the past. But if you're really new to doing self work, like it's slow, and like you kind of like first scratch the surface and you realize there's something else under there and there's something else under there. But I think like one of the coolest experiences I had was with this woman who I had worked with her for quite a few sessions. And we'd finally gotten to the point where I was asking her, like, well, what like makes you happy? And she realized she's like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I've ever been happy. I don't know if I've ever focused on my own happiness. And she's like in her 80s. And she's like, I was just a mom and a wife and like doing all these things and like realizing that she had never focused on her own happiness. And in her 80 something year, after many sessions, she like had this realization that that was just like never a focus for her. And so that felt like mind blowing to me because if you're not focusing on your own happiness, like you're not asking yourself, like, what do I want? How do I live in a way that brings me joy? So I think kind of like that slow discovery over time. And it's like usually little bits and pieces come up through coaching. And it's really a beautiful process.
When I imagine that there's a lot of work with figuring out what people's values are. Like how can you live in alignment with your values if either you don't know what your values are or you've only rested on like the external societal. That's what I used to do, right? Before I had my awakening is my values were society's values and my work's values and my parents' values I just defaulted externally to that, and it was a big awakening process to realize that I was like bereft of my own of my own values, and so people are, I'm sure, just in this deep discovery mode, and then self-worth is always wrapped up in there. I wonder, did you find with that 80-year-old lady that she had to do any self-worth work to begin to prioritize herself and her happiness?
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of moments where she was really hard on herself. And I eventually called her out. And it was coming up with like a lot of things that she was saying, like, oh, I'm so, dumb with technology, like just something little like that. And then as we dug deeper, yeah, it became clear that there wasn't like this self worth or feeling of like kind of like self nurturing that I think you need to prioritize your own happiness.
Yeah, that's some deep. Then and just think 80 years of like neuroplastic architecture that's like these paths in her brain had been trodden to like put herself last, to criticize herself, and then you're beginning in your work with her to form these new neural as well as spiritual connections, and I'm just woo 80 or like I am sending that woman all, it's just I don't know if you're still working with her, but I'm sending her all the support and love and encouragement because like, woo, that's what an incredible story. Like hashtag never too late.
Oh, for real. Yeah, she was amazing. I'm not working with her anymore, but I loved working with her because she was so open to it and like motivated to make whatever changes and kind of like go deep and stuff. So she was so fun to coach. I really loved working with her.
So do you do mortality awareness work in your coaching?
I want to try to kind of bring that in more. but like I feel like I led a little too much with the like death piece initially. And so then I kind of changed towards more of like the life alignment piece. And now I want to figure out how I bring those two together. So I haven't done like I did actually like kind of a variation of your deathbed meditation as like a workshop. I kind of like made my own variation of that and tried to create conversation around that. And it was received really well. But I'm still working on bringing the two elements together in my coaching.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of like a pendulum as we figure out what works uh, and yeah, did you ever read the book Staring at the Sun by Dr. Irvin D. Yalom?
No.
Yeah, so he's still alive actually. He's like 96 or so years old, but is a psychologist, and he eventually in his work settled into this. And again, he was sort of like a pendulum. He didn't start doing this, but eventually he settled into bringing mortality awareness into his work. So he called himself, I believe, an existential psychologist. And what he found was that a lot of people would come to him with these like psychological complaints, like, I'm not happy with my life, I'm depressed. And he would expose them to mortality awareness and realize that, oh, they're actually harboring this like really subconscious fear of death or trauma around death. And it was one of the most profound books that influenced me to start and continue with You Might Die Tomorrow. And I think he's just a really nice guy. So I recommend that to you and to anyone listening. It's called Staring at the Sun by Dr. Irvin D. Yalom.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to check that out. That sounds really powerful.
So you really have this. I want to get into RV life here in a second, because I know you said that was like a big moment in your life, and I want to talk about that. But first, you have this, we've talked about your nursing, we've talked about your coaching now, but you also have an experience with physical wellness coaching as well. So you're doing this life alignment coaching. You have the background in nursing, but you also have multiple other certifications. So do you also coach people on their physical wellness in your practice?
Yeah, I really don't like discriminate on like any particular issue, because I think so much of it does come down to like, I think so much comes down to living in alignment personally. Like, I think so many diseases and so many ailments come from not living in alignment, because maybe it's causing you a ton of stress, and then you start eating a lot and you're not working out and you feel depressed. So to me, those all kind of go hand in hand. Like, I think it's really interesting when people come in and they say like, well, I want to start working out. Like, cool. Like, we could definitely get you to start working out. That's no problem. But it's like, well, why do you want to start working out? It's like, well, I want to lose weight. And then and then the more and more you like peel back the layers, you realize like, oh, well, maybe you're trying to lose weight. You don't feel good about yourself because you're a mom and you've lost yourself in being a wife and a mother, and you don't feel connected to your body. And so it's like, you can really like get down deep into these root problems that appear to be like wanting to lose weight or go to the gym, and maybe even like a medical problem. But I think deep down, so many of these things are much deeper than that.
Well, and I think in that work, then you're helping them so that when they start, they keep going, because these things always come up when we want to. There's all these walls that we hit from trauma or habits. Yeah,
Definitely.
So tell me about this big transition. So you're transitioning away from nursing, and you're starting this coaching business, and you decide was it you and your partner, and you guys got an RV and hit the road? How did this come about?
Yeah. So it was actually during COVID, and I was like, I'm sick of this. Like, let's get out of here. I'll do travel nursing. I'll make like twice as much by doing the same stuff. And so we bought an RV off Craigslist for $1,500, and we're like, we'll fix it up in like 6 months. We'll hit the road. But it took us like 2 years to fix it up. We did like full renovation. And then we finally did, well, during the renovation, I think like, to me, I feel like there was so much personal transformation in that, because my boyfriend's super handy. He's like welder, carpenter. He's very good at doing that kind of stuff, where I'm not, and that's not really my thing. I saw how he would like tackle these problems and just like decide to dive in and just believe he could do it. And then he would figure it out. Like, he figured out how to like set up the solar panel, wire it electrical. So it's like fully off grid. And you just did it like with YouTube. And so I decided, I was like, well, I'm going to figure out the plumbing because I could do this. So I did like deep dive to figure out how to plumb this thing. And it took tons of like a bunch of hours and it's like so much. I got so stressed about it, but I figured it out and it like wasn't that bad. And I was like, oh my God, I can totally do this. Yeah, female plumber at your service. And so it was like that kind of thing like kept growing. Like each thing that I took on, I feel like kept building my confidence. And then like a huge piece of it was when we finally decided to get in this thing, it's like we left our awesome apartment in Denver, all of our friends, my sister, my well-paying job, and to move in with our two big dogs in this old RV we had never taken out before. We had never gone anywhere in it. We just had been working on it for 2 years. And I had so much fear and anxiety around it. Like, what if we break down? What if me and my boyfriend have a big fight? What if like all these what ifs were going through my head? And I was like, I just felt like if something went wrong, that I was going to like explode and the world was going to end. And then when we finally did it and we got in and like little problems came up, I was like, oh, we can figure this out. Like, I can figure this out. Like, the world isn't going to end. And so like all these little things just kept like building my confidence of like, I can figure this out. And I think that that's like really segued into my business where at first there were a lot of thoughts of like, yeah, who am I to do this? To who's going to listen to what I say? Like, how am I going to build a business? I don't know how to do these things. But it was like, I can figure this out. I've done it before. I can do it again. And I think a huge piece of that was actually related to the RV. So it was like an incredible gift that I got from that I wasn't expecting at all.
Oh my gosh. So it was you, your boyfriend, and two dogs, you said?
Yeah, two like 75-pound German Shepherds, bull mixture.
Yes. Oh my gosh. We're gonna have to trade dog pics after this. Wow. And you know what strikes me about that story? I mean, so many things, but one of the things that strikes me is, you've just given two stories just in this show about how really challenging times in your life cause these like light speed accelerations in your growth, right? Like you're in the ICU in COVID, right? Oh my gosh, that I can only imagine. All these people are getting sick and dying. And in that you were able to just be forged not only, but you discovered your deeper purpose. Like that's huge. And then fast forward a few years, it sounds like, and you guys decide to get this crazy idea, get this RV. And in that you're forced to face all of these things. But through that, you got a huge confidence boost.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I think, yeah, a big piece of that. And like in both of those where there were like moments where really had to ask myself, it's like, what do I want? Like, what is going to make me happy now? And like had to do kind of like that deep dive. And I did have, I had an Ayurvedic doctor who was like a lot like a health coach at that time when I was kind of going through the stress of work and moving into the RV soon. And that helped a lot because she led me through a lot of like heart-based meditations of like, what's in there? Like, how do you tap into what is really in your heart of what you want to do, what's right for you? And it was so scary. Like I had so much anxiety around all of these things. But like once I did it, it was like, oh my God, this feels so right. Like this is so freeing. I'm so energized. Like it all feels right. But it did take like some serious reflection to get to that point.
Well, and I think it also speaks to the value of some of the challenges in our lives are sort of put in our path and others like we can choose, right? Like, it's like,
Yeah.
how can you shake up your life in a way that introduces friction, challenge, so that you can get to your next level of personal or spiritual growth? And I can definitely lay claim to the same thing, that RV life was very confronting for me. Like, I was sort of the opposite. I'm more like delusional. I always think everything's going to be way easier than it is. And then when I get in it and it's way harder, I'm shocked and awed every single time. So for me, I was like, this is going to be great. And then when I got on the road, it was like, that was when it really, and it's so funny we have that in common because I also, when I got this RV, I was doing two things at once. I got the RV, renovated it, and was going to be living on the road full time. And that was the same year, 2022, that I was like, I'm going all in on entrepreneurship. I'm not going to have a side job anymore. I'm just going to like make all my, and trying to do those two things at once. Like, entrepreneurship is very confronting on its own, as you and many people listening probably know. And then when you throw in like living in an RV on the road, driving around the country at the same time, like it was, I mean, I don't want to say I don't recommend it, but I kind of don't recommend it. Like, choose one hard thing at a time. Okay.
Yeah, that's good advice. Yeah, definitely. I can't imagine. Yeah, mine kind of like overlap, like one tapered off as one tapered in, but like to go full bore on both, that is a lot. And that's a really good way to put it. That's very confronting. Like you have to overcome lots of barriers internally for both of those things for sure.
And y'all are trying to get back out on the road soon, right?
Yeah, I mean our big thing that stopped us was not being able to make money. That'll thing. And our RV got like 9 miles to the gallon, so we were just like crushing gas. So, but we loved the freedom of like living on the road, and we started. Maybe you might know like some of the like nomad community. Like we kind of popped into that a little bit with Tusculi, met this group of people that all kind of like travel together. And it's like this almost like this alternate universe. It's a really cool subculture. We're like, man, we really like this. Like, how can we just make this like a part of our lives, like indefinitely, hopefully? And so I was already working on the coaching. And so I just kind of decided it's like, I just want to make this be sustainable. Like I want to be able to make money off of this and I can do it from the RV. And my boyfriend's working on his own kind of like side project business thing. And the goal is to be able to have a place in the Northeast where my family is, but in the cold months, just like live on the road and be flexible, be mobile, and hopefully keep that going. Cause we couldn't do too much longer the way we were doing it, unfortunately.
And for people who don't know, is it Schoolie-palooza that you went to, the big school? So tell us about that experience. What was that like going in? First of all, not with the school bus. And second of all, I've never been to that. Actually, I've seen about it, but I've also never been to Quartzsite. I mean, I've driven through there, but I've never, which is another huge like nomad community. So I'm just curious, what was your experience like at Schoolie-palooza, which is like probably the country's biggest school bus and nomad meetup somewhere in the Southwest, right?
Yeah, I think it was in Quartzsite actually. It was somewhere in that area. It was wild. It's the biggest like unorganized event I think in the country, where it's so weird. Like you go and everyone just kind of like knows what to do. Like these little like communities pop up, and I think it was like 1,000 vehicles or something would be there, so a couple thousand people. And everyone's self-contained, so like they have their own bathrooms and kitchens and everything. And you go and it feels like you're at like a festival almost. Like there's people like fire spinning and dancing on the roof and offering all their like homemade stuff. And you just kind of walk around like it's like a fair kind of, but it's in like, people's homes, and you feel like there should be like all these like events going on, and there are, but they're not planned. People just like decide to like have like a Reiki tent or or whatever. And it's so crazy because there's nothing else like it that I've experienced in the US, where it's kind of like organized, but not really. You can still just like do whatever you want. You can, and then you're also there like in your house. So it's like you can go and hang out, or you can go take a nap, your lunch. I highly recommend it for anybody curious. It's a super cool experience.
Oh man, that is so cool. I wonder if I'll get there. I think there's a couple of them. There's Schoolie-palooza is the biggest one. And then I think there's a few other smaller ones. It just reminds me of this time that I went to go visit my friend in Tahiti. Her and her boyfriend had, at the time, they're now husband and wife, they had gotten this sailboat and they sailed down to Tahiti, and they had been living on their boat, right? It's not dissimilar at all from RV life, right? Like, you got to make your water and the solar and the, where are we going? Point A to point B. How's the wind, right? Like, how's the storms? It's my friend, when I bought the RV, she's like, oh yeah, you bought your land yacht. So you're going to be sailing across the United States in your land yacht. But the first time I ever went to go visit her, it was so life-changing because I was so in the matrix. as they call it. Like you have to get this type of job and this corporation and make this amount of money, and then you try to climb the ladder. And and when I went to Tahiti, I not only experienced my friend and her husband living on a sailboat, this sort of like survival adventure life, but we met tons of other people who were like crew members on actual like super rich people yachts, and they were getting paid to live on the yacht, and the owner comes out like once a year for the week, and the whole rest of the time they're just paid to live on and take care of this amazing gorgeous boat. And I met people who had like moved away from Canada and are now living on an island in Tahiti, and people who are like scuba instructors, right? And it was the first time I was like, it opened my eyes to this idea of, number one, you can do whatever you want with your life. There are so many paths, and the paths that you're not seeing are the result of conditioning. Okay. And then the second thing, like your story of Schoolie Palooza just reminds me that, like, as weird as you want to be, like you will find your people. You will find your people, right? And if you're so plugged into one particular subculture in your town or among your colleagues, like just branch out and join different groups or clubs, and you will get exposed to so many things. And I just think you guys had I'm envious of that really rad experience that you had at Schoolie Palooza. And just, it sounds like you kind of had your minds blown.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I had connected with this guy on Instagram. He was a Nomadic DJ, and I had followed him on Instagram, and we got invited to this like New Year's Eve party, which is what started it. And we got there, and they had like this sick DJ booth, like lights strung up, fire spinners, just like, I don't know, 40 or 50 people. And we're like, what is this world? And then we went to Schoolie Palooza, and it was that times like 20. And it sounds like a really similar experience that you had in Tahiti. It was like, wow, once you're unplugged from that system, you realize like there are so many cool ways you can live your life. Like you don't need all that stuff that you think that you need. Like even just like all the clothes, like you wear the same-ish thing every day. Or like, I don't know, like it really just opens your mind to all these different ways you can live. Like at Schoolie, there was like the family camp. And there was people with their kids, and their kids were having so much fun, like with all these other little like schooly kids running around like in this, community space with all these RVs. Like it was really beautiful. It's unusual, but it's really cool. And it's like you don't even know what's out there until you unplug or get out of the matrix, as you called it.
And I think the other thing I noticed, I haven't been to Schoolie Palooza, but I was like a very big burner. I just came out of I had a 7-year, affair with Burning Man where I went every year for 7 years. And now I'm sort of like, I don't know, I'm not feeling the desire to go anymore. But the thing about something like Schoolie Palooza or something like Burning Man or this type of like festival culture is, I think when we are in our everyday life, people can be kind of jerks. Right. And so we can start to develop these assumptions about people that, they don't like to talk, or they're only obsessed with their phones, or people are kind of mean and they steal my parking spots and whatever. And like, but if you sort of unplug from that and go to some of these events, you are reminded, because people are the best versions of themselves at these types of festivals and events. And it just reminds you that not everybody are jerks. Like there are really kind, welcoming people. But sometimes you do kind of have to remove yourself from society to go experience that. And of course, we always want to bring that back into our everyday life. But if you're feeling like everybody sucks and everyone's grouchy, like go to an event, go to a concert, go to a festival, and just remind yourself that like people actually are wonderful.
Yeah, that is such a good point. Yeah, it's like a different side of humanity, kind of like without like the structure and like the intensity. And when people are kind of just like free to like express themselves and be creative, it's so much more beautiful and inviting and loving. I mean, you still have some of the like, the regular human negativity stuff, but I'd say the vast majority is like very positive and beautiful.
Beautiful. So what's next for you? You guys are trying to get back out on the road. You have this amazing wellness and life alignment coaching business. Your partner's got it sounds like you said he's a welder and a contractor, but he's working on a cool side hustle as well. What are you guys up to?
Like, what's he doing?
Yeah, what's he doing? And then what's kind of coming up on the pike for y'all?
Yeah. So we have a really great living situation right now, and we're hoping to be able to buy a house that we can fix up enough and then leave it for the winter months and drive and hang out in an RV somewhere in the south. So like that's kind of our dream is to like buy a place that's like well within our means, fix it up, and then be able to kind of like leave for the coldest months and have like this flexible life of like because I definitely miss having we've moved so much in the past like year or so. Like it'd be really nice to have a home base and you know have room for all of my things in an office and all that stuff, but also like keep that taste of like the adventure and the freedom and being away from the cold weather. So that's our vision for the future. And I think we'll definitely get there with time, but that's what we're looking at.
I'm super excited for y'all. I'm super excited for y'all. So, if you have been listening to Megan, and I know you can feel that energy through the microphone, through your speakers, through your computer screen, I really appreciate your energy because you have this very calm, measured energy, but you're also you're a great listener. And then I loved earlier when you were like you called this 80-year-old lady out on her shit. Which is just like the perfect this is what we want in a coach. We want someone who will listen to us and who will reassure us that we're going to be okay and the world is not ending, and also when it is called for, call us out on our shit. So if people have been listening to you and have been appreciating your wisdom and your energy, how can they get in touch with you if they would like to work with you?
Yeah, well, thank you for such kind words. I really appreciate that. But I can be found on Instagram. My handle is flowstate_Meg. The name of my business is Flow State Health. So we got flowstate_Meg on Instagram and then the same on YouTube. And that's probably the easiest way to find me is on Instagram.
Cool. And so then if they wanted to understand kind of what your offerings are, I know you offer, it sounds like one-to-one intuitive coaching. Is there anything we should know about that or any other programs that you offer?
Yeah, well, I have a newsletter that I send out. It's like a monthly newsletter with some kind of weekly tidbits in there about meditation. And I hold a free Zoom meditation the last Monday of every month. So you can subscribe to my newsletter. All this stuff can be found on my Instagram and my links. And then I also do have like a website. Like you can book a discovery call with me for free. I have a couple of like freebies on my website as well. I do workshops too, about like monthly workshops. I just did a really cool one last night actually about affirmations, and we like dug deep into our subconscious to like find our limiting beliefs and create personalized affirmations. And it was really cool. And so if you're interested in that stuff, yeah, I do monthly workshops and all that stuff you'll be able to find on my Instagram or my website.
Cool. So then to close us out, would you mind just taking us through an affirmation that's maybe showing up in your life or one that you've seen that is working for people? I'd love it if we could just sort of end on something relating to this affirmation work that's really fresh and alive for you right now.
Yeah. So I guess the affirmation that I've been that's really helped me in the last month is to overcome some of my self doubt, and I choose to believe that I can, I will, I am, and then I apply whatever it is I'm trying to overcome into that, so I can fill in the blank, I will fill in the blank, I am. But I like to just do I can, I will, I am, and then just really feel it into my whole body.
Cool. Can we do that together 3 times?
Yeah, definitely. You want me to lead it?
Please.
Okay. Nice deep breath in. I choose to believe that I can. I choose to believe that I will. I choose to believe that I am. I can.
Mm.
I will. I am. Breath. Can.
I can, I will, I am. Mm. Megan, thank you so, so, so much. I wish you just all the best blessings and adventures and a little bit of challenge thrown in there to keep us fresh. But I just like thank you so much for sharing your gifts and talents and energy with me and everybody listening now and in the future.
And thank you so much. This was awesome. It was really great getting to know you, and having this experience was really wonderful. So I appreciate you so much for asking me to be here.
Beautiful.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Be Alive with Kate Manzer. And thank you for listening to any episode of Be Alive with Kate Manzer that you have ever listened to. It seriously means so much to me. You guys, we are coming up on 1 year of this show. What? Yes, and I am not going anywhere. In fact, I am doubling down. I have the most epic and beautiful, exciting season 2, year 2 planned for you. We are going to go even more deeply into the science, philosophy, psychology, and woo-woo of the wild and wonderful experience of being alive, as well as one of my personal favorites, as you know, mortality awareness, mystical experience, and beyond. It's going to be so, so good. Thanks for being here. Share this with a friend, subscribe, and let's let this little show shine its light wherever it's meant to, but with the help of your sharing. Thank you so much. All my love. Thanks for being alive with me today.